The quick answer? All the myths you saw at the beginning are completely false. The only true myth I ever recall anyone saying was, anyone can quickscope, and that is true provided that you actually put in the time and patience required to learn it. Now in this video I will try and show you and teach you most of what I know about quickscoping, aiming, and accuracy, while relying on my own experiences, tested facts, and as much detail as I could possibly provide. I will also show you the mechanics behind the most basic and the more advanced ways to use a sniper, while also disproving some of the misconceptions and misunderstandings surrounding the topic of quickscoping. Still, I strongly urge all of you to try and test all of this for yourself, as it's really the only way to be sure, plus that way you won't have to take my word for it. While I advise you to watch the entire video because it offers a lot of in-depth tips and explanations, you may want to use the skip annotations at the top corners to jump between chapters and find what you need. As a final note, if you do enjoy this video and or find it helpful, please consider leaving it a like and adding it to your favorites. This will help the video reach more people and help you find it for future reference. Thanks, and I hope you guys enjoy it. The idea of quickscoping is by no means new. While the term definitely grew in popularity around COD 4, the idea of quickscoping has existed since the first time a player ever faced a choice between using his gun's scope or not. The basic idea of quickscoping is that using a scope carries certain disadvantages, like very limited mobility, limited awareness, no map, no vision, slow reaction potential, and so on. With the scope, you basically give up all of those, while gaining better vision of your target at a longer distance, which helps you get the kill. So in theory, the shorter time you spend scoped in, the more awareness and mobility you have overall because you gain it back when you're not scoped in. The idea I'm getting at here is that if you were to take 3 seconds to kill a target, then it is more efficient than if you were to take 5 seconds to kill the same target. With the same logic, if you were to aim for only a fraction of a second and only scope in for a fraction of a second, that's even better. But the focus is still on getting the kill. If you fire and miss, that's usually far worse because you're only taking longer overall to get the kill, plus you fired a shot which reveals your position to the enemy. Now, as I learned to snipe and quickscope from the very start till now, basically, I've always focused on getting the kill, and only then tried to make each kill more efficient or quicker. So push yourself to really get the kill, and only then push yourself even further to make each kill as perfect and as efficient as possible. This brings us to one of the most common and most pointless debates when it comes to sniping. What is quickscoping and what is hardscoping and which one's better? The truth is, there's really no set standard. There's no department of quickscoping and there's definitely no quickscoping police, as much as some may try. That's where the confusion really comes from. Everyone has their own names, ideas, and meanings about all of these things, and obviously they don't always match. Because of this, let me explain how I've always thought of the terms just so you can use them for the rest of this tutorial. Now, a hard scope is simply a shot where you use your scope to find a target. That means that when you ADS, or aim down your sights, you actually wait to see and look through the scope, then find your target, then aim, then fire. You need to see through the scope, or in other words, give your brain enough time to register and understand the zoomed-in image. A hard scope can therefore be very quick if you do all these things very quickly and then scope out, or extremely slow to the point where you spend most of your time scoped in. In both cases, though, the aiming technique is essentially the same. Now, a quickscope, on the other hand, is a shot where you don't ever really plan on seeing through your scope. With a quickscope, you've already found your target, usually at closer range, you know exactly where the bullet needs to go, and you only ADS fully to get the improved accuracy that comes along with it. Here, you're not really ever planning on waiting to see your target through the scope and then aim. You're aiming before or while you're ADSing your gun, and firing as soon as you fully ADS. This is why quickscope is quicker in theory, but I will cover all the mechanics in detail in the actual aiming chapter later on. Finally, drag scopes are somewhere in between for me because it really depends on whether you use your scoped or the zoomed in image to find your target or whether you zoom in and drag on instinct. Whichever one, it doesn't really matter because drag scopes are just a mix of the two. The only point you should take out of all of this though is that a good sniper should and can do both. If you miss long-range hard scopes, that's extremely inefficient, and the same goes for not being able to land a close quarters quickscope. Both will humble your ability as a sniper, and you will never be a truly effective and great sniper. The only thing you can do there is use other guns or rely on other tactics like going behind choke points, but that's really not the point of this tutorial. Now, the problem is that some do focus on looks, And just remember that beauty is something that we should all be striving for, but at the same time, any kill, action, or anything can really be beautiful. What makes it beautiful, though, is usually the involved skill. Skill leads to beauty, not the other way around. For example, a great basketball player, quarterback, or musician plays beautifully because he or she is incredibly skilled and comfortable with what they do. You should be striving for skill first and only then beauty. And now let's talk about the most misunderstood yet most important features Call of Duty has to offer on consoles, and that is aim assist. Now let me say this right now as it's the most important fact on this topic. Multiplayer aim assist on consoles does not in any way move your crosshairs or aim for you. If you aim slightly off target, the bullet will go slightly off target. You will miss. There's not going to be some magical, miraculous aimbot that will adjust the shot for you. Many players who don't quickscope misunderstand this fact, but what's even worse is that many starting quickscopers somehow believe this myth and fire away hoping that just the right zoom or just the right breath will fix their shots. But it doesn't. There is no secret for how to magically make aim assist work for you because it just doesn't. So let me show you exactly what COD aim assist actually does. It only has one effect, and that effect only exists at medium to close distances. Watch what happens as I drag my aim from right to left at a constant speed using only my right analog stick. It moves at a constant speed except for when it gets very close to the enemy target. At that point, it simply slows down, or in other words, your sensitivity decreases when you aim very close to the target, and then it goes back to normal once you move too far out. You will notice that the crosshairs actually turn red for this entire lower sensitivity or aim assist effect period. Notice that there's no auto adjustment whatsoever. The game simply gives you a slower sensitivity so you can aim easier. You should notice that the faster you turn or the higher sensitivity you use, the less obvious or noticeable this whole effect becomes. Like I, for example, play on 10 sensitivity and you can barely notice the effect. Now watch what happens when I'm only strafing using my left analog stick without moving my right analog stick or aim at all. You get a very similar effect while only strafing because as you strafe, your aim sensitivity again slows down the second your crosshairs get very close to the enemy target. Since only your aim sensitivity slows down though, and you keep strafing at the same speed, it looks as if your aim starts lagging behind. But the effect is still the same. You're just given lower sensitivity while aiming close to the target, and there's still no magical lock-on. As you can see, if you scope in while strafing like this, the scope will simply go exactly where the aim was, and it won't care if there's a target there or not. An even better example. If you position your aim close but just far away enough from your target so then you see the red crosshairs, meaning that the aim assist effect is actually active, but you scope far away enough from the target that the sway doesn't actually ever reach your target. Now you can see that once we're scoped in, the sway or the crosshairs will never touch our target, which also shows us the maximum sway or the maximum range of any quickscope at this distance. Therefore, if we were to quickscope without further moving our aim from this exact spot, we should never hit our enemy, even though the red crosshairs and aim assist effect is active the entire time. As you can see, this is exactly what happens, as the crosshairs are there, but we simply miss each shot because it's simply far away from the target, so no sway could possibly push it back in. A final example, if you stand completely still and your enemy runs through your crosshairs, you won't notice anything happen. You still get the lower sensitivity or aim assist effect for as long as the enemy is close to your actual aim, but you will only notice it once you start aiming. If you're aiming or strafing using both analog sticks, in other words, you will notice that again the same thing happens, only your sensitivity slows down once you aim sort of close to your target. That's it. The important thing to remember is that regardless of whether you're moving, strafing, or aiming, nothing actually moves your aim for you. The scope will always go exactly where you're aiming, regardless of whether there's a target there or not. The other important thing to notice is that this entire aim assist effect disappears the second you move a little further away from your target. The second the red crosshairs disappear, you're far away enough, and from this point onwards, there is no aim assist whatsoever. You can move around, you can strafe, you can look for your target, but you will notice that the red crosshairs will never pop up, and your aim sensitivity will never go down. At this point, there is no auto aim whatsoever. Still, naturally, quickscoping at this distance is not really a problem if you have good accuracy. The final important fact to remember is that the aim assist effect or slower sensitivity also applies to when you're actually zoomed in and using your scope. So in other words, if you are hard scoping and you drag your aim at a constant speed, you'll get the same slow sensitivity effect that we've been seeing all along as you pass over your target. So to sum up, the only effect aim assist has in Call of Duty is to slow your sensitivity down when your aim gets close to a target. And this only happens at close to medium range, as I showed you, when your hit markers turn red. Aim assist does not in any way aim for you or move your aim, and if your aim is a bit off, you will miss and there will be no imaginary lock-on to fix it for you. To continue on the same point, quickscoping and accuracy do not require any aim assist or the lower sensitivity it actually brings you. To further illustrate my point, I will be shooting at the flower pots in the distance from left to right. Clearly, here there is no aim assist whatsoever, as there are no enemy targets anywhere in sight, and the pots are only background objects as far as the game cares. It's the same as shooting at a wall or any other object that does not register as an enemy. Also notice that the flower pots at this distance are a very, very small target, much smaller than your usual enemy. The pots are so small, in fact, that the natural sniper sway, you can see right now, is large enough to throw my aim off the pot, even though I pre-aimed directly at its center. What this means is that even if I lined up all my shots perfectly and then quick-scoped without further aiming, I could still miss the pots just because of how huge the natural sniper sway is. As you can see, even with all these downsides, it's still very, very possible to be accurate and actually hit the pots. If you were to hold in your scope though, and hard scope just a little, you could hit all the pots from much further away with a lot more certainty. This is a perfect example of when a distant target makes a lot more sense to hard scope than to quick scope. And here's just another example of a different set of pots, which I'm taking out while taking cover behind the wall in between each shot. Now, this exercise is really just meant to show you that you can truly be accurate with a controller on a console without any hidden tricks or magical aimbots or whatever people think exists. And while I did miss that last spot, I guess it's the perfect time to show you that jump scopes works just fine without any aim assist or anything like that. Of course, keep in mind that I will be teaching you how to do all of this in the upcoming chapters. The last misconception I want to quickly address is the theater effect. Darthan explains this pretty perfectly in his quickscope tutorial, and you can click the link at the bottom to follow that. Basically, whenever you watch gameplay through theater or a killcam or a game-winning killcam, what you're seeing is not an accurate representation of what actually happened. This is a private match setup, so just watch each kill carefully. You'll notice that I do cut it pretty close, but I do zoom all the way through. This is live footage, meaning that I captured it directly from my capture card while playing. However, once we watch the game-winning killcam of those exact kills, we see that the footage looks delayed, and the scope never truly comes up. If you pay attention, you'll notice that even the animations look slightly different. The point here is that theater footage or killcams of any sort are always laggy or delayed. They're not an accurate representation of what happened. Also, the laggier the connection, the less accurate the theater/killcam footage becomes. Most of the time you see really buggy kills, half scopes, shots that really don't go on target, or twitchy movements, or even a crazy knife lunge in the killcam or theater footage. Just remember, it's not really what happened, it's an exaggerated version of it. And now it's time for some basics. If you haven't set up a quickscoping class yet, you can check out my videos on that at the bottom of the screen. The only real necessity in Modern Warfare 3 though is quick draw. Now, right from the theater discussion, let's talk about the most important essential. You want to zoom all the way through. Now, if you see the scope, for even just a frame, the bullet will go exactly where you're aiming. That's why you want to ADS completely. If you don't scope all the way in, on the other hand, the shot registers as a hipfire, a no-scope, and it will be insanely inaccurate, and the bullet will go in a random direction somewhere within your crosshairs, even if you're aiming directly at your target. So therefore, your ultimate goal should be to get at least one frame of scope every time, even with the fastest quickscopes. Another important basic: always make sure you're completely still, as in not moving, as you fire. This is critical when it comes to accuracy. Now, FaceCross explains this in a lot of detail in his quickscope tutorial, for which the link is at the bottom. Basically, if you fire while moving, your shot will be very inaccurate. Remember that stopping is also not instant. It takes you a few seconds to stop, and it's even slower if you're sprinting. Now, a good technique if you're struggling with this is to let go of the left analog stick or your movement as you start pressing or holding in the ADS button or trigger. That way you should hopefully be completely still by the time you've scoped all the way through and you're ready to fire. Also, if you do sprint a lot, you could consider using the Pro version of Steady Aim, which helps you ADS faster after sprinting. But the only thing you should remember is always be still as you press the fire, otherwise it will not be accurate. And finally, holding your breath. Now, I personally don't understand all the confusion and questions when it comes to when to hold your breath, as there's really nothing tricky or secret about it. Basically, if you hold your breath, your aim will become steady once you're scoped in, but it takes a second or two for this effect to even kick in. If you're planning on using your scope, therefore, or hard scoping, by all means hold your breath because it will give you a steady crosshair and an easier time aiming. On the other hand, if you're not planning on using your scope and you're only scoped in for a frame or two, it makes absolutely no difference, as you won't be scoped in long enough for the effect to even kick in. Enough said, moving on. And now, let's take everything we've discussed in the previous chapters and see how it all fits together. By now you should have a very good understanding of the mechanics that control the game, your aim, and how to fire off a proper quickscope so the bullet actually goes where you're aiming. Now, putting it all together, let's discuss the last major area of quickscoping, which very few tutorials actually focus on. How to hit your target in a real situation where the enemy's moving and not just waiting around for you to kill them. Now, you're watching a regular free-for-all on mission, and I've just spawned. I've added a little fake crosshair in the middle of my screen just so you can better see where I'm actually aiming. For the record, I've never used any stickers or so on, and with a little practice, it's very easy to get a natural feel for where the center of your screen is, and thus your aim at all times. Anyway, back to the gameplay. Here I'm simply running around until now, when I first noticed the enemy to my left. From the previous chapters, we now know that you should stop moving, aim, scoping completely for at least one frame, and then fire. Now, if in this situation your instinct is to aim to the left and kill the gold PP90 carrying enemy who's not even looking at us, well, that will be wrong. The key here is that our target is moving. While ADSing with quick draw is very fast, it still takes time. It's not instant. That's why you should always aim at the path, not the player. In sniper terms, this is called an ambush shot, because I'm aiming ahead of the target and waiting for him to pass through my sights, hence the name. Since ADSing is not instant, you have to actually lead your target so it's in your sights once you're fully zoomed in, not when you start zooming in. In this example, I'm aiming at the red target because that's where I estimate my target will be once I'm fully zoomed in. The same applies to the next skill. I notice him to the right, and I keep aiming a little bit in front of him the entire time. Had I tried to shoot directly at the enemy player in this case, or the green crosshair, I would have missed as the shot would have been behind him by the time I fired. Don't expect this instinct to develop overnight. Just give it some time. After sniping and practicing this for a while, you develop a very accurate instinct for exactly how long it takes for your scope to come up, and thus just how much you need to lead each target. However, there is another part of the entire quickscoping aiming process that few people actually pay attention to. Since players, especially good players, rarely run in straight predictable paths, your pre-aim or prediction of where the enemy will be won't always be or stay accurate. This brings me to what is perhaps the most important aspect of my style of quickscoping and how I can be accurate: being able to aim while raising your scope. The most crucial part of landing an accurate quickscope is being able to aim in the short period of time between pressing your ADS button or trigger to the point where you see the first frame of your scope and thus are ready to fire. Watch carefully where my aim is when I first start ADSing, and then watch where it ends up by the time I'm fully scoped in and firing. This is the only way to be truly accurate with a quickscope, as your target will often change paths or positions while you're in the process of ADSing. The trick here is to only slightly move your right analog stick and keep perfecting your aim until you fire. This way, if your enemy changed direction or you realize your original pre-aim wasn't dead on, you still have time to fix it. You can see that even with my 10 sensitivity, it's still very possible to aim by mere pixels at a time if you barely tilt the right stick, and this only becomes easier on lower sensitivities. If you don't do this, and you only pre-aim and never aim while you're actually ADSing, you will likely end up having to drag scope or hard scope a lot more often than you want to. Practice this type of fine aiming while you ADS and you'll improve your shot drastically. Now let's go into the final section of aiming accurately, where I want to talk about the speed of your enemy and the angle at which you approach them and how to use that to help you aim better. Here you're watching a private match setup where a couple of friends of mine are helping me out. This is basically a crosser quarterback drill I used to run in football, which I've adapted to Modern Warfare 3. The idea here is to hit your targets while they're basically running at a 90-degree angle to you. Because of the angle, These are some of the hardest shots to hit because your target is moving across the entire view and thus offers a very small window of opportunity. To hit this, you have to fine aim while ADSing and pre-aim perfectly, and it took us some tries to actually get this. You can also notice the huge difference the speed of the target actually makes, and how noticeable it is from this angle. A slow strafing target is much easier to hit than a fast lightweight sprinting across your screen. Now contrast this with another private match setup where my targets are simply running towards me. If the previous example was the worst possible angle, then this is by far the best possible angle, as the targets generally stay in one very predictable area of your screen, and aiming at them becomes a breeze. Here, their speed is also much less noticeable. What all of this is meant to teach you is that positioning yourself is very important. If you give yourself a good angle, you will hit your targets easily. With the same logic, if someone's trying to shoot you, give them the worst possible angle by running sideways. The only thing left to do now is practice. Like I said at the start, being an accurate and effective quickscoper or sniper takes time, practice, and most of all, patience. Go into a mode like free-for-all. Learn how to be effective against any gun or any tactic, not just other snipers. Look at every shot you miss and figure out why you missed it. Look at every death and figure out how you could have stayed alive. Work on improving every part of your shot and every part of your gameplay, striving for it to be as perfect as possible. If you do that and you give it enough time, you will be as great as you want to be. I learned everything by simply experimenting, testing, and working on perfecting each thing. In this video, I've gone over right about every important aspect that helped me in a lot of detail. This tutorial turned out far longer than I expected, but I'm happy because now all the information you need is right here, and I do hope you use it. Thank you for watching, and happy sniping!